This is a community coaching question today that I think is relevant for everybody because essentially it's about internal versus external validation. And it's something that I have got stuck on in the past in quite a big way, particularly with rules, right? So, rules about marketing or rules about how to do something, and not realizing just how many of these rules I picked up and internalized. It's shown up in terms of grief and, how long I think I'm allowed to ask for help. So I want you to always have this habit of just noticing, like, what rules am I unintentionally following? And do I want to keep them or do I want to decide my own rules? So I'm going to read you the coaching. What can I say? The coaching. I'm just going to read the coaching. So today's my birthday. For several years now, I haven't wanted to face my birthday because I feel like a failure. It's like at the start of every month. I hope my future self will be satisfied with my present self. But when the month ends, I really don't want to look back on it because I feel like I didn't reach the goals I set. Okay, so first of all, let's just pause and take a moment to just notice the amazing courage and vulnerability of sharing this. And if that really resonates, to just take a second to notice, like, how does it feel? Right? And how does it feel to be constantly feeling like you failed and not seeing the ways that you've achieved things and not seeing your own brilliance? Because it is there, I promise you. Okay. Now, setting realistic expectations isn't easy, and I don't want to keep disappointing myself. I want to be able to affirm what I did yesterday when I wake up today, to affirm last night when I start the next, last month when I start the next, and to feel like I lived the previous year meaningfully and more freely when the next year begins. So I love this. And this also shows like the beautiful progress of coaching, of having a very clear want, right? I want to be able to affirm what I did yesterday and when I wake up today. I want to affirm last month when I start the next. And I want to feel like I lived the previous year meaningfully and more freely. So I love those because that's like a really beautiful, clear goal of these are the things that I want. And so now we can start to do them, right? The thing slowing this down is actually the concept of realistic expectations. Because remember, what our brain and society tells us are realistic is usually through that 80% negativity bias. Okay, so realistic is super, super subjective. Realistic, is it realistic that I can run 10 kilometers in 15 minutes? I don't normally run, so I don't know. I really don't know. Is it realistic for somebody who runs regularly? Yeah, maybe, right? So we want to think about like everybody's realistic is different. And we're also always pushing the boundaries and the edge of what's realistic. So what's realistic for us today is an evolution of what was realistic yesterday. It's just constantly, constantly changing. And it can leap enormously. I'm going to use the example of my dog Rita and my expectations of how she was able to navigate the world with other dogs and with other cats. And when I was expecting there to be problems, what was realistic was very, very small, right? Like, oh, maybe we can walk past this house with 50 meters of distance if I'm distracting her with treats. And then after I did 4 sessions with her trainer, who's this amazing, positive, force-free trainer, very smart, very loving, incredible. What became realistic was suddenly when there's a dog off the lead with no owner, Rita can actually sniff and be sniffed by that dog, and we can leave the situation and there's no blood, there's no tears. It's all okay, right? That changed in one interaction, right? My idea of what was realistic changed literally in one interaction. I didn't choose the interaction, but we had it. Okay, so realistic is a really great one to pick up on. Anytime you hear yourself saying realistic, just shoop, grab it and just interrogate, what do I actually mean by realistic in this context today? Okay, really beautiful. Love that so much. So, the coaching question. My question about setting goals. Speaking of my doubts as a questioner, so my personality type or learning style. So, for those of you that haven't done the four tendencies test, definitely recommend doing it because it's a really great way to signpost what's happening. Just as our amazing Joy Studio member has already started to dive into this, okay? She's looking at how does my tendency affect the way that I set goals and the way that I'm experiencing that. So, I love this. I don't know how to set reasonable goals, okay, which is great because we can see brain is swapping out realistic. Maybe even my client knows that I'm going to be like, realistic is subjective. So her brain is like, okay, not realistic, but reasonable. And that's what your brain will do. It will start to like move things and switch things so that it's still stopping you from doing the thing you want to do, but it feels like it's a new thing. And I worry about being too self-centered. So I love this. For those of you Joy Studio members, there's actually a training, a lesson coming up this week about the idea of being self-centered or selfish and how culture affects that. And again, we're going to look at, I've pulled this out on our best behavior. If you haven't read this, take a look at it, see how it applies to you. It won't all apply, but some things will. It could be interesting. So I absolutely love this because you know, it's a way for us to see what is slowing us down, right? And we can see it clearly in the words. So the fear of being self-centered and the idea that you don't know how to set goals, right? So what we want to do is just pause here and say, okay, where have I set goals that worked really well for me? Where have I set goals that I've enjoyed achieving, right? That's our starting point. For example, I want to engage in deep learning, and I believe reading is more effective than passively listening to lectures. However, my reading speed is very slow because I have to stop and think. And I'm going to argue there that that's not necessarily a problem because one person can read quickly, but they don't take in any information. And another person is reading slowly, but they only need to read once because they actually understand and process what they're reading as they go through. On top of that, I'm always mindful of external expectations. My teacher has recorded many courses I haven't watched yet, and other students are diligently listening to all the lectures. So I think this is a great example. It's something that I learned with time hackers, is you don't need to do every single thing to get the benefits. Remember that each of us has already got an enormous amount of experience and data inside of us. And so we're not all taking the same information from the same thing. You may be reading something and it just clicks with something you've already experienced. Whereas for another person, they're encountering the concept for the very first time. So it takes them longer. So that's why we always want to come back to ourselves and be asking, how does this work for me? How does this apply to what I want to achieve? And that's really, really important. I'm currently neither following my own preferred method nor executing the externally defined one, which makes me even more anxious. This is like many decisions in my life. I try to follow external rules, but I'm afraid to truly follow my inner voice. So I love this because it's a classic questioner issue as well. Like for us, we can feel it even more sharply than other people. Tends to be obligers and upholders. This is in the Four Tendencies quiz if you haven't done it. They're able to kind of quiet that inner voice more effectively. So they'll be like, I don't get it, but I can do it. Whereas for questioners, we're like, I don't get it and I can't do it. So this is where we want to really practice creating safety for ourselves to fail as we listen to our inner voice. And I would say what we want to do here is number one, really bring down, make the window of experimentation and evaluation even smaller, right? So if we were applying this to food and you were changing how you eat, what you might want to do is like have little notes and be asking yourself and doing a body check-in before you eat, listening to the voice, like, why do I want this food? What am I seeking here? How do I feel while I'm eating the food? How do I feel after the food? How does my body feel a few hours later? To really be evaluating and checking in. That's how I was eventually able to give up caffeine. Not because I was like, well, people say it's bad, people say it's good, right? Because that's the problem. When we're listening to external advice, we can find evidence to support any of it. I can find you 10 pieces of data, of research right now that will say that caffeine is not good for someone with my physical profile. And I can find you 10 pieces that will say, yeah, it's great in moderation or whatever, like blah, blah, blah. What I want to do is just connect with me. And I noticed that actually, the majority of the time, coffee isn't great for me. My skin looks awful, it gets dehydrated, I get more anxious. I don't actually like the taste of it. I don't like the taste, I like the buzz. Okay. Which is why I've now got a very big chicory next to me because what I do like is the comforting full feel of coffee and the fact that it's milky and the fact that it's cozy, right? So I've got a chicory, cinnamon, almond milk concoction that I've created. So that's what we want to do. We're able to do that evaluation by creating the safety for ourselves to fail. Because if you're going to blame yourself for not immediately getting it right, you're not going to let yourself listen to your inner voice and you're going to stay in this limbo of not going all in on somebody else's plan and not going all in on your own plan and weakening your self trust. So, what I would do is flip this fragmentation, right? I'm currently neither following my own preferred method nor externally, nor executing the externally defined one. And I would ask, how can I create harmony? How can these two things complement each other? Which may look like I'm going to primarily listen to my own voice and I'm going to listen to what other people say, but I will decide if it's relevant for me or not as we go in each moment. So, Joy Studio members, take what you need from this and let's keep the coaching going inside the community. And if you're listening to this, watching it somewhere else and you'd like to join us, then there'll be a link that will tell you all about the Joy Studio underneath. And enjoy the rest of your day, beautiful people.